Welcome to the Accounting Technology Fireside Chat Podcast. Now, sit back and enjoy while Nick and Trevor help you use your technology to make money and delight your clients.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Accounting Technology Fireside Chat Podcast. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, and how are you?
I'm excellent. It looks like we've gone through we're getting some nicer weather. Lockdown is ending early, they tell us on the news today. So
you're going to end early with 2,000 cases a day. That sounds lovely.
Golf, and I played golf 3 times last week. So there you go.
Wonderful. That's why you've got the sniffles. You could smell COVID in the air.
I haven't got the sniffles. I've got that itchy nose. Must be hanging out with those NRL players or something too much.
Well, for us, would you believe Monday pubs are open again?
Yes.
So the Doherty modelling stated. I was going through some stats this morning, as I normally do in the morning. I'm browsing the stats, and of course the government's very, very excited that we've hit over 81% of people first dose vaccinated. But when you compare that with the world figures, there's a little difference, which is quite funky. The world reports total population vaccinated.
Yep.
We report people over 16 vaccinated. Right? So on the world scale of first dose vaccinations, we're still 124th.
But the world thinks we've gone vaccination mad, and they're protesting for us over in
No. The
Poland
US
and over in the US.
Yeah. So this is funky. This is a media narrative about the 263 days of Melbourne in lockdown, most lockdown city in the world, blah 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 blah, which is a fascinating narrative because the narrative is
blah,
that
blah 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 when you've only been in 80,
I don't know, whatever. But the if you compare deaths per 100,000 people, right, the whole of Australia is still doing incredibly well, although we're doing a bit worse now. But you've got places like Poland who've lost percentages of their population protesting that we should open up, so we should too lose percentages of our population. So if you want people to die of COVID, you go ahead and follow what they say. I think it's stupid because protesting in the US or Poland sure as hell ain't going to change what we do.
No, I don't. So let's talk about the big news yesterday.
Big news for some people. A couple of minor social media services were inaccessible for a few hours.
Inaccessible. Yeah, so they were saying was it the 404 era, the dreaded 404 era? So
well, it wasn't so much. NetNet, from what I can read, I read their engineering blog this morning, because I'm interested in what really happened. And so their engineering blog says effectively what happened is somebody inside Facebook made a configuration change to their networking settings. Now, this isn't the same as going up to the little router in the corner of your office and making a change. These are a very large, very complex networking system. So somebody implemented a configuration change. I assume it probably wasn't tested so well. And it had the ripple effect of removing all connectivity between Facebook's services, and that's Facebook Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, and a bunch of other things. And I've got some funny stories about that from the internet in general. So those services suddenly became inaccessible for everybody.
All I picture, as soon as I heard about it, I picture all those funny stories you used to tell me about when things go wrong that you've had to fix. You've gone, oh gosh, we didn't back that up. I just picture this guy, this poor IT guy going, uh-oh.
Yeah, so there's already been a post in the IT humor section on Facebook. There's been a few. One of my favorite. So a couple of ones I think are real. Is a couple of recruiters have said that Facebook have reached out to them and said, when this is all over, can we start hiring some networking engineers? Which is probably a really good idea. It was rumoured that when the response team from Facebook got on site, none of their swipe cards would work, so they couldn't get into the building.
I heard that one. I heard that. And that sort of defeats the whole. That changes. I think that's a bit of a conspiracy theorist thing, saying, "Oh, it was everything, not just they've shut them all out of everything, you know.
Well,
Blah, blah, blah.
my favourite one was the guy who posted, and this is a joke, right? It's not real. He goes, had a great first day at Facebook, made a production change. There was no comments about it going wrong on the private message WhatsApp group, and my boss said he'd send me a message if anything went wrong. It seems to be all good, you know.
So, how does it happen, Nick? You know, like, okay. You know, we talk about cloud, what we focus on. We talk about cloud.
Mm-hmm.
The people way smarter with bigger systems manage this stuff, right? So I sit there and I go, all right, hang on a minute. This stuff can go wrong. People can make mistakes and we can lose stuff. But we only lost it for 6 hours.
Yep.
It's
and
not
you'd notice not only was it down for 6 hours, but when it came back, you didn't notice it come back. It wasn't like you had to reinstall applications or re-authenticate or anything nasty like that. It just worked again. Yeah. It's kind of funny, and I've been involved over my career in a number of occasions where things have gone wrong, and you know, I spend a good deal of my time in an area of information technology called systems management. And what we do in there is we try and really prevent this kind of stuff happening. So the first thing is that hardware and software, well, hardware fails. It just does. It doesn't run forever. Disks fail, chips break, capacitors pop, power supplies go bad and fry things, and all that stuff happens. So what you try and do in a large system, and I've worked on lots, is you try and create multiple paths of redundancy. Right, so it's not just one connection, it's lots. And if one fails, it's fine, it routes between the others. And actually, funnily enough, the internet is designed like that. So the internet itself was originally designed to survive nuclear strikes. So there's lots and lots of different connection points that connect to different things, and it's pretty robust. That does mean, though, if you're sitting in your office and you've got a single internet connection, if you're running a small business, you're in the cloud and you have a single internet connection, that's your biggest single point of failure now.
Right, yeah.
You should have two. Or you should have the ability to hop to wireless. Or you should have another option that's just not that one piece of fiber or NBN or whatever. Because those things just get dug up. They really do. You know, you get somebody doing some roadworks and off it goes. And that's one of the biggest outages, is somebody digging up a cable. And
worst case scenario is, and this is by having, you know, laptops and all of these sort of things, that you can, you can just go, okay, that's down, flick over to my phone. That's, you know, the brutal, easiest way to access everything until that gets fixed. And we had it at our Richmond office. Remember that with Hanson's when they dug up? We didn't even know. We had the failover 4G network and it was running for, I think, 3 weeks. We didn't even know they dug up our cable in front. So, and that's kind of how it should work, right? That's how we kind of want it to be. One of the other issues is if every time you try and create a level of redundancy, you double your cost. Yeah. So if you're working in a traditional, back in the day when you had your servers on premises, you should have 2 servers for everything you do, at least. Yeah. Because it's got to be redundant. So every time you go, server's going to cost me 50k. No, it's going to cost you 100. Because you've got to buy 2, and then you've got to buy the networking gear to handle that, and the load balancers to handle that, and you've got to architect everything properly. And this is what they do in the cloud, right? There's multiple ingress and egress points. There's multiple things running. Now, interestingly enough, when you look at someone like Microsoft, they've learnt the lessons over the last 22 years of what it means to actually run these things at enterprise scale. Because it's not just little, small, and medium businesses that use Office 365. It's large enterprises. And you could go, well, you know what? Facebook's just social media. We're going to lose some advertising revenue, but at the end of the world, nobody's going to die because Facebook's down. It gets different when you start talking about core business systems. So there's a different level of rigor. I think if you look at the availability, and this is the metric we use to say, are things able to use? If we look at Office 365, which is delivering about 4 nines of availability, which is 99.99% availability. In a standard small business office computing environment, you could only hope to offer 2 nines, maybe 3 if you're lucky. So 99% or 99.9%. If you multiply that by the number of hours, you get quite a lot of downtime out of 3 nines. So,
Microsoft have really changed how we think of things being
immediately
available.
grabbed my calculator.
And yeah, I used to
say. I nearly went. Hang on. So what's 6 hours on 300 on 365 days times 8?
Yeah, I think
it's not
4 nines equates to 8 hours downtime a year. Right,
so Facebook down for 6 hours a year. They're within that 4 nines.
They could actually be within their SLA if that's what they agreed to. Most people don't agree that anymore. But that's the kind of things the service level agreements we used to have to do. So when we're building systems inside large banks, which is where I come from, we used to have multiple redundant paths for everything. So whereas you'd spend 50 grand on a server, we spend 5 million on delivering that same service, but deliver it across multiple redundant paths. And still it broke, right? It wasn't, all of this was there and it still wasn't perfect. Things would go wrong. So you get to why things go wrong. And I've been nice. I've talked about hardware failure. Somebody can release an update or a patch and things can go wrong. But the main reason things fall over is because of humans doing stupid things.
And then
right,
who gets fired?
Well,
someone's going to get fired over this one.
Well, you're not going to fire someone for making a mistake. What you're going to do is look at the systems and processes that surround that person and improve those.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be in a position where your entire operation, your multi-billion-dollar operation, rides on some bloke with some unique set of skills. So you can't have that, right? So you've got to go, what's the process that was followed to implement this configuration change? Who implemented the configuration change? Which team approved it? How was it documented? What was the rollback provision? Why did it go to custard? And then you'll go, well, next time we're making a configuration change, we'll either change our infrastructure or we'll do it this way, which will stop it happening. And that process is something the aircraft industry has used for years and years. You know, when there's an air crash, there's a big investigation, and at the end of it, they change some stuff so that issue won't happen again.
Yep. That's how they'll do that.
Yeah. So there's another rumor going around which I'd like to dispel, is that there was a data breach as part of this. As far as Facebook can tell, and I think everybody else, there was no data breach. There's no evidence of a data breach. No data was lost as part of this. In fact, you couldn't get to your data. Facebook was way more secure for 6 hours than it probably is now.
And as I said to someone yesterday, who cares? Like if I've put, it's whatever I've put there, I don't really care about. I'm not putting anything up there that I want them, that I'm worried about.
You might not, but there's a lesser known application called Facebook Workplace. And Facebook Workplace does actually, do the equivalent of Slack or Teams and some other stuff inside businesses. So they do have a business tool. And as far as I know, that was unavailable as well. So it has had some impact. They're not just a social network that people have fun on it. There are commercial reasons why people use it. I was led to understand that we've just had just this string of people resigning from the New South Wales state government for some reason. I'm trying to remember the initials, ICAC or something. I don't know, corruption, some stuff. In fact, I've got to do this. Well, no, because a lot of politicians communicate with each other through WhatsApp because it's private and secure. So when they're doing their who's going to vote for me, who's going to vote for Rob Stokes, who's going to vote for Don Perrottet, they would have been WhatsApping each other, and it was all down on the morning of the vote, which probably didn't work well for a few people.
Oh, there goes another conspiracy theorist. Ooh.
Well, it's not a conspiracy theory that politicians communicate with each other, right? We've all known that for years.
No, that it went down, and next minute, I can't pronounce his name. Your new premier,
Perrottet,
comes in with a 36-5 vote.
It was pretty good, considering he's on the righter wing of the crazy right-wing lunacy fringe of the right-wing bit of the right-wing bit of our government. Just the right Genghis Khan. You can't miss him.
Nick and I have a very big... We should do a different podcast on that one. We have a big discussion about this. Every week we go through and have a laugh at each other and laugh at our leaders and where we sit in the world today. But we're not going to talk about that on here.
We could call it lefty and righty, keep it tighty. There we go.
Yeah. But we're still friends.
We are.
So let's summarize this realistically, right? So Facebook crashes. World news.
Facebook. Well, Facebook didn't crash.
Not available.
Facebook was inaccessible because of a networking change. All the Facebook services were still running. They just couldn't talk. And one of the things you should think about, if you ever get a virus in your office, the first thing you should do is unplug the internet.
Yeah.
Right? It just so happens you don't run lots of servers anymore. Facebook do run a few, but there you go.
Yeah.
They'll have learned lots from this.
Yeah,
so in summary...
Who wants to run servers again? All those in favour who want to have a server anymore? You know, like look at these guys. No one can run them.
Well, if the amount of money they funnel into running this infrastructure still causes them to have a 6-hour outage, how much do you and your corner shop IT guy have of actually hitting high availability? None. So the interesting other thing you've got now in your world is it used to be when you had a server or servers, if the power went in your office, you had no services. IT just didn't work. Whereas now, if you think about it, you've got Zero Practice Manager, you've got Zero, you've got Office 365. There's probably some other apps you use as well. One of them can go down for 6 hours. There's still other stuff you can do. For example, if Office 365 went down in the middle of the day for 6 hours, I'll dive into Zero and do a bunch of that work. If Zero went down for 6 hours, dive into Office 365 and do a bunch of that work. You've got lots of options. It's not You're not that single point of failure is kind of gone in multiple ways now.
Yeah, so that maybe that's next week's conversation. ERP,
Enterprise Resource Planning this week.
Brain dead. Having a stack of applications versus one big system.
Oh, monolith. Yes. The best of breed versus single source of truth. Yes, that old chestnut. We're happy to talk about that.
Well, maybe that's a good one for next week because that one's coming up a lot again lately. Everybody's moving a bit. There's a bit of movement in the market to go back to that the one big system that all talks to each other because they're having apparently issues with integration, which I think integration is probably the best it's ever been. But so anyway, summarize.
I think we could talk about that to a degree because I've had some conversation with a customer not in accounting recently where they're kind of moaning about that, but they actually don't understand what integration is. They don't understand what their opportunities for integration are. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So in summary, Facebook went down because one or more humans made a change to their systems which caused a cascading set of failures, and you can do that. I know someone who made a change to a system it wasn't me, but I was involved in fixing it, that took out a large section of one of our major banks. I've certainly made a change to a system which had a cascading ripple effect on a large global bank. So lots of people have been involved in those types of scenarios, and I think in the world of cloud, although you've got less control over fixing it, you don't want to have control over fixing one of those. There's better processes, better people, better systems, and they spend a lot more money doing it. If you want an idea of the stuff they have to go through, go and read some documentation on ISO 27001. That gives you a high-level view of the different checks and balances you need to put in place if you want to run your own infrastructure at scale at high availability.
And see how running off to go and read ISO 27001.
27001. Yep, I saw you
running off to go.
No, quickly, let's get back to the tax legislation. That's far more fun.
Far more easy to read. Well, that was another bit of fun. It's always my highlight of my week is catching up with you, Nick. How long is it since we've been faced? We got together once for a coffee. Back in, was it October last year, a year ago? And we
it was a year ago.
For a year or so before that. And that was the day that DY had their breakout. They had their So the Northern Beaches had the COVID breach or whatever was going on. You had your cluster happen, and I'm sitting there going, and here's me. We're giving each other big hugs in the middle of the city, and I've gone,
yes.
I think I'll just isolate for a bit. Nick, tell me when you get your results when you get back home. But at least you go and do that. These are the things you've got to do now. And as we move into, like just to be serious about that sort of concept, what we're seeing down here is that our contact tracing and all that's dropping off, and we're seeing businesses and people stepping up, which I think is fantastic. So we're hearing about
ours broke.
people
Yeah, I think you've seen what's happened to us, and you've preempted it a little bit. What happened to us is our contact tracing actually broke. When you start hitting 1,000 cases a day, if you assume each case takes 10 hours of an individual to contact trace, you suddenly do the maths and you run out of people. And you run out of population really quite quickly. So I think what happens is contact tracing breaks. We've just had an update to our Service New South Wales app, which will now tell you if you've been to a location that's had another COVID person in it. So rather than the contact tracers phoning you, the app's now doing it. And I know in the UK, their app actually will tell you to isolate and tell you how long and tell you when you can come out. And so they're starting to remove people from that loop. And that's why they're a lot more open, is their app does a lot more. We'll slowly get there. Remember COVID Safe? We should talk about that.
Yeah, where'd that go?
You know, in total, in the whole life of that white elephant, it found 7 contacts that the contact tracers found earlier.
Well, what I was going to say, I know we've got the app and all those sort of things, but what we're seeing down here in Melbourne and Mount Eliza is the business owners are stepping forward now. So it's no longer a dirty word. They're saying, hey, guys, we've identified there's been a COVID breach. If you've been in whatever supermarket down in Mornington on these days, blah, blah, blah. That hasn't even hit the tier 1 hotspots yet. Hasn't even got there. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's the people getting grown up about this and starting to think holistically about it rather than
and I think
blaming the government.
What the World Health Organization says is, although that's really good, you still if you have a team of people whose job is to do this, they'll do it all the time. If you have a group of well-meaning business owners, then 80% of them will do it.
Yes, I understand. I get that, but it's just gives you a feel good with all of these.
And yeah, you need that. You need that. And I'll think of you on Monday when I'm in the pub. I sent you pictures.
Yeah, so I can walk around the golf course. Not supposed to have a gown, not supposed to go to the toilet.
Yeah, you can't go to the toilet, so you have to go before you go. It's so funny. Anyway, enough of our COVID rubbish. Trevor, that's been lots of fun. Have a fantastic day. See you all.